What you're about to watch isn't a personal gripe or procedural spat. It's a dispute over whether congressional oversight will still function the way the Constitution intended. Adam Schiff wasn't complaining about hurt feelings. He was describing a breakdown in process, one that has real consequences for transparency and accountability.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. One of the advantages of being the junior most member of the committee on our side of the aisle is you get to listen to everything that's gone on before you during the course of a hearing. And I want to add my voice to my colleagues who have raised the concern about what happened yesterday. I listened to my ranking member ask a legitimate oversight question about the legal basis for troops to be rappelling from a Black Hawk helicopter for a military-style assault on an apartment building in a major city, the zip tying of children. What was the legal basis for this? I heard my ranking member ask that very simple question, that completely appropriate question. If that's not an appropriate oversight question, I don't know what an appropriate oversight question is. And the response was not just to refuse to answer the question, but it was to attack the character of the ranking member and to insult him. And then when it was Senator Whitehouse's turn to ask a question, he asked a very legitimate oversight question about a FBI undercover operation in which reportedly $50,000 was paid to the White House border czar prior to him becoming the White House border czar, but with the expectation that he would be helpful in arranging contracts when he became the White House border czar. What happened to the money? A perfectly legitimate oversight question. And rather than answer that question in a closed investigation, not an open investigation, but a closed investigation, she simply attacked Senator Whitehouse personally. And I heard another one of my colleagues ask, what was the legal basis for blowing up ships in the Caribbean? Reportedly, the Justice Department wrote an opinion justifying blowing up ships in the Caribbean. A perfectly legitimate oversight question, and the response was another personal attack. These, what were apparently canned, written personal attacks in advance. I wouldn't bother with the attacks on me. I've grown all too accustomed to them for the last 8 years. But if members of this committee can't ask those serious questions and get serious answers, we can't do oversight. I'm new to this committee. I spent about a decade on the House Judiciary Committee. I never saw a hearing like this with a cabinet officer. And if I did, and some Democratic cabinet officer were to personally attack each of my Republican colleagues, I would call for a stop to it. It would be disgraceful. And I understand the reluctance to criticize on your side of the aisle one of the Republican cabinet members. But if this becomes the template for future hearings, we won't be able to do any oversight, and things will just degenerate. These questions deserve answers. I would expect that if troops were rappelling from helicopters in any city, in any of your states, and hog-tying children, you would want to know the legal basis. And so would I. We are going to submit for the record in written form the questions that the Attorney General refused to answer. I would hope, Mr. Chairman, you would join us in submitting those questions. They will have a much better chance of being answered if you join us in submitting those questions. But I would hope also in the future that if a witness, rather than respond, simply attacks our members, that it be stopped. That the witness be instructed to either answer the question or to state why they're refusing to answer the question, but to refrain from personal attacks on the members of this committee. That would be my request. And Mr. Chairman, I'm really grateful to be on this committee. And I appreciate every interaction I've had with you. You have, in our personal interactions, always been eminently fair. If I didn't think that you were of that character, I wouldn't even raise this because there wouldn't be a point. But I would ask that we not have another hearing like that one, and that you join in our legitimate oversight request. And with that, I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
I thought that I set the decorum for a hearing, oversight hearing, when I said before we asked the director of the FBI any questions or any statements, that we should both sides treat each other with respect. And I even said to Patel, if you don't get a chance to answer your questions, I'll give you an opportunity after the senator's finished for a few minutes to respond whatever you didn't get a chance to say. And you know how that meeting turned out. And particularly from your side of the aisle, a lot of strong statements about the FBI director. Whether they were legitimate or not is beside the point. It didn't follow the decorum, and obviously the director of the FBI didn't follow the decorum. So I don't know what more I can do than plead with my people who are fellow senators to follow a certain decorum, and I assume it would be followed on the other side. I don't appreciate the insults that went to Democrat members, particularly where they were wrong, but after seeing how senators handled the FBI director, I guess I felt that just let the show go on the way the senators wanted to go on. And that's what developed as a result of it. That may be a weak excuse for what happened that day, but I thought things didn't work out the way I expected them to when the FBI director was here, and some of the people on your side of the aisle were some of the ones that were screaming and yelling and talking over the FBI director.
As the newest member on the committee, Schiff did something important. He listened before he spoke, and what he heard across multiple exchanges was the same pattern repeating itself. Serious questions were met not with answers, but with insults. The questions Schiff referenced weren't fringe or theatrical. They were basic oversight questions any member of Congress is obligated to ask. What is the legal basis for troops rappelling from a helicopter into a residential apartment building? What authority allows children to be zip-tied during such an operation? If a military-style action takes place in a major American city, Congress has a duty to understand the justification for it. That's not political, that's constitutional. The same is true of the second issue Schiff raised, when an FBI undercover operation reportedly involved $50,000 in cash tied to a future government role. The most obvious question is simple: what happened to the money? Schiff made a crucial distinction here that viewers should not miss. This was not an open investigation. It was a closed one. Oversight does not interfere with active law enforcement when the case is already closed. Refusing to answer in that context is not caution, it's evasion. Then there's the third example Schiff cited, reports that the Justice Department authored a legal opinion justifying the destruction of ships in the Caribbean. Whether one supports or opposes that action, the legal basis matters. Congress authorizes war. Congress funds the military. Congress has both the right and the responsibility to ask how lethal force is being justified under U.S. law. In each case, the response was the same. Not an explanation, not a refusal grounded in privilege, but personal attacks, what Schiff described as canned, pre-written insults. That detail matters because it suggests the confrontational posture wasn't spontaneous, it was prepared. Schiff's comparison to his decade on the House Judiciary Committee is also revealing. He wasn't romanticizing the past or pretending hearings were ever polite. He was making a narrower point. Cabinet officials historically do not attack members of Congress personally when asked oversight questions, and when they do, chairs typically step in to stop it. That norm exists for a reason. Once witnesses are allowed to substitute insults for answers, oversight collapses. What Schiff asked for was actually modest. He didn't demand sanctions. He didn't ask for the witness to be silenced. He asked that witnesses be required to do one of two things: answer the question or explain on the record why they are refusing to answer. That distinction is critical. Transparency includes knowing when and why information is being withheld. Grassley's response, however, reveals the deeper tension. He framed the problem as one of decorum on both sides. He pointed to a prior hearing with the FBI director where, in his view, Democratic senators were aggressive, loud, and disruptive. His argument, essentially, was that the hearing with Attorney General Bondi devolved because decorum had already broken down in earlier proceedings. That explanation may sound procedural, but it carries an important implication. Grassley suggested that once the rules of decorum collapse, the chair's role becomes limited, that the hearing becomes, in his words, the show the senators wanted to put on. That's a remarkable admission. It suggests oversight is being treated less as a constitutional duty and more as a performance shaped by partisan escalation. Here's what viewers should take away from this exchange. Oversight doesn't fail all at once. It erodes gradually when chairs stop enforcing standards, when witnesses learn they can avoid answers by attacking questioners, and when hearings become contests of volume instead of clarity. Schiff's warning was not about Democrats versus Republicans. It was about precedent. If this becomes the template, future hearings under any administration will be reduced to noise. And when oversight becomes noise, power goes unchecked. This matters beyond this committee, beyond these personalities. Congressional oversight is one of the few tools the public has to see inside the executive branch. When that tool breaks, secrecy fills the gap. If you care about accountability, about transparency, and about a government that answers to the people rather than shields itself behind insults, pay attention to moments like this. Share them, talk about them, demand better. Because oversight only works when Congress insists on answers and when the public insists that Congress do its job.